Welcome aboard, Eagles fans, to episode 29 of the No Huddle Show, our Eagles podcast right here on NJ.com. I'm Joe Giglio, joined as always by Eliot Shore-Parks, Mark Eckel. Eliot, been out at the Combine. Mark been writing about Sam Bradford. The Eagles, we have a lot to get into here as the Eagles get set for free agency, which will start very soon. And the big elephant in the room, and it kind of ties back into the Combine and all these players that they're looking at, of course, is Sam Bradford. Eliot, we'll start with you. You've been out in Indianapolis. You've been seeing some of the other quarterbacks, but yet the conversation is always around our favorite quarterback, Sam Bradford.
Yeah, and going down to the Combine, what I was way more interested in than the actual prospects was just what the Eagles were going to do with Sam Bradford, because that gives them a chance to, when they're down at the Combine, they get a chance to actually meet with Tom Condon, that's Bradford's agent. They met with him face to face. They get a chance to talk to other teams in the league to see what type of interest there's going to be in Bradford. Bradford's agent gets a chance to, he's not supposed to, but every agent does it, kind of gauge the market for his client. So it was really an important week in terms of whether Sam Bradford's going to be back or not. And I'll say, leaving the Combine, the vibe I get is that he's going to be back. Just the people you talk to around, just different people that would know, and the opinions around the people around the league is people do expect him to be back. Now, whether that happens, I don't know. We can talk about kind of why that signal is out there. But I think when the day they fired Chip Kelly, I had the chance of Bradford coming back at like 20%. Now I feel like it's definitely above 50 and maybe even inching closer to 70.
Now, with that, we found out on Sunday, we're doing this podcast on a Monday, that the Eagles, apparently, according to Mike Garafolo of Fox Sports, they upped the offer to Sam Bradford. We don't know what it was to begin with, but that leads you to believe they're moving towards trying to bring him back. And Mark, you wrote on Monday about maybe like what would it look like? What is he worth? What would a contract look like between the Eagles and Bradford? And I mean, what's this guy's value to them and around the league?
It's really hard, and that's what I wrote in the story. He's a hard guy to compare to anyone else. And the three I used, and I didn't even like using them, but they're the closest, would be Andy Dalton from Cincinnati, Ryan Tannehill of Miami, and Alex Smith, somewhat of Kansas City. Those three guys got deals done from 2014 on. Tannehill's probably the closest comparison in that, neither one of them's ever been to the play. Like, Smith's a bad comparison. I have to admit, Smith's a bad comparison. Smith's won a lot. He's won playoff games. He went to an NFC title game with San Francisco. He's been in the league longer. Tannehill got a good deal for him. I don't think the Dolphins would do that deal again. I don't think. Tannehill's deal was 6 years, $95 million, 45 of it guaranteed. Dalton's deal is probably more comparable, 7 years, $97 million, 17 guaranteed. But I don't know if you want to go that deep with Sam Bradford, 6 years or 7 years. And the other factor, which we can't overlook, is whether you like Ryan Tannehill or not. And I'm not a big Ryan Tannehill fan. The guy has in his 4 years, he's played every game. Every game, has not missed a game. I don't think we can say that about Sam Bradford.
I was going to say, is that the case with Sam Bradford?
No, I think he's missed about 33 out of 90 or whatever it is. So not yet. So I mean, there's that, and you can't. If I'm Howie Roseman and I'm the guy on the other side of the contract, I'm bringing that up every other minute. I mean, every time Condon says, "Well, he did this," I'm like, "Hey, listen, the guy's missed 33 games." I mean, that can't be overlooked. It just can't.
No, it can't be. It's a part of his story. It's a part of what the Eagles have to, kind of deal with and try to figure out what he's going to be worth.
It's why the Rams traded him.
Right. It's when you're trying to project forward, it's part of his story, part of what they're going to do with him. And Eliot, last week when Howie Roseman talked and Doug Peterson talked at the Combine, they talked about having a backup plan in case Sam got away. And, that leads into the draft and leads into the Combine and all these quarterbacks that were there. I mean, when you think about it, do you think they really do have a backup plan, or is it almost like they're going to try to bring back Sam and then they'll just pivot from there if he doesn't come back?
No, I think they have a backup plan. And I think this week at the Combine, they got a chance to kind of look at that backup plan close, which is draft a quarterback. The on-field stuff for the quarterbacks at the Combine, frankly, probably doesn't mean much at all when you're evaluating. The 40-yard dash isn't very important. Even when they throw, that's probably the most important thing they do. But even then, it's still it doesn't mean much because there's no defense. They don't have the pads on, that type of thing. But what does really matter is the one-on-one meetings that the Eagles get with the quarterbacks. Frank Reich gets to be under their offensive coordinator. The quarterback coach is in there. Peterson's in there. Howie's in there, and they get a chance to actually meet these quarterbacks. And Peterson talked about it at the podium this week. The one thing he's looking for in a quarterback is the ability to look in the eyes and say, all right, this can be my guy. So if the timing of this Bradford report, it comes out on a Sunday. The Eagles spent, I know they met with quarterbacks Friday and Saturday night. So, maybe that indicates they're not as into the quarterbacks as they thought coming into that. I mean, I don't know, but certainly the backup plan would be to draft one. And Eckel can talk about this a little more. But just in terms of the quarterback class, it's not a weak one. There's just no day one starters available. There's not a Marcus Mariota or a Jameis Winston. That doesn't mean that you can't find your franchise quarterback. And if Doug Peterson's supposed to be good at anything, it's developing a quarterback. So if their backup plan is to draft a guy and have Peterson develop him, they certainly got a better idea this past week as to if there is a guy out there that fits that criteria.
I don't mean to be a jerk here, but who has Doug Peterson ever developed?
Well, he did do good work with Nick Foles. Foles rookie year.
He did. We went 1-6.
No, I know, but I'm saying, a rookie. I don't know.
He developed Alex Smith.
Well, then, if quarterback development isn't Peterson's strength, what is? That's supposed.
He has a very, very open.
Yeah, that's true. His heart is very open.
Hugs people. I've seen him hugging people, so he hugs people.
He's a nice guy.
People. Yeah, he's open heart. I would put open heart at the top of his strengths.
Right, but just realistically, he is a former quarterback. He is a quarterback coach. That is supposed to be what he does well.
I guess he's never done it, but okay, if you want to go with.
Well, but I'm saying that would be their plan. Their plan would be to draft a rookie and then have him grow with Peterson, have Peterson develop him. Right? That would be the backup plan.
That would seem like the idea, right? If they could find their guy and then, obviously develop the quarterback. Do you think, and Eliot and Mark, you both kind of said this, with this quarterback class not having, maybe it's not bad, and maybe there will be some good quarterbacks that come out, but not having that day one starter or a few guys that you feel like, all right, you could throw them in from the start. To me, that shouldn't really affect the way they handle this Bradford thing. If they love Bradford, bring him back.
Exactly.
If they don't, they should move on. But I have a bad feeling it's almost like, well, we don't want to be really bad next year, and when these quarterbacks aren't ready, so hell, let's re-sign Sam.
I couldn't agree with you more. And the Eagles have to know Sam's our guy or Sam isn't our guy. Yeah. And the money shouldn't matter. If he's your guy, then he's your guy. Pay him whatever you want to pay him and give him a 5-6 year deal. Ignore, and he's your guy. And whoever could be your I don't care who your backup is at this point. But if he's the guy, if you think Sam Bradford can one day take you to the Super Bowl, then then go on and just draft some linemen and help and get the defense a little better and let's go. But if you don't think that, then move on because he's never either. Here's my thing with Sam Bradford. He's not young. He's not old, but he's not young. This is what he is. I don't know of any quarterback in all my years of covering football that got extremely better in year 7. You know what I'm saying? Like he's not going to, you could tweak it and make it a little bit better, but he's not going to turn it around. He's not going to make a massive jump next year. So this is what he is. If you think he's good enough, then fine, he's your guy. If you don't, then stop wasting your time and stop putting the team a year behind again by not getting someone else.
Right, and it feels like they could be doing that. It feels like they could be, heading down that path.
Yeah, I don't know what they're doing. I'm more if and when they do sign Bradford, and Eliot seems to think that's going to happen. This is the first time ever with a contract where I'm more interested in on the length of the contract as opposed to how much it is. I don't care.
Well, yeah, that's my big thing. Everyone says like, how much can you, is Bradford worth $20 million a year? Is Bradford worth whatever a year? But the real thing that the Eagles need to be careful of is that they don't commit to him for 4 years, where the contract's written where they realistically can't get out of it for 3 years. Look at the DeMarco deal. DeMarco, whatever they gave him is what they gave him. His cap hit is what it is. But the tough part of the contract is they can't cut him. They maybe could. Depend. We can talk about that. But with a $13 million cap hit, basically impossible to cut him. So
and that's the deal Tannehill has with Miami. It's hard for them to get out of that.
right. So if the Eagles sign Bradford, and that's the thing too, like the Eagles obviously want to give Bradford a deal where after each season they could get out of that. I mean, that's just what every NFL team wants. But Bradford's not going to sign that, and that's when it comes back down to interest. Is there a team out there that's willing to say, all right, Bradford, for the next 3 years, you're our guy, and we're not going to get rid of you. You're going to be our guy. I don't know if there's a team out there. I mean, I don't know why any team would do that, but if the Eagles are willing, that's the tricky part of the contract. And I would imagine that's the holdup because look, the Eagles say they want Bradford back. They say that publicly, even though they don't fully commit, they do say things like, we've been clear we want Sam back. Doug Peterson says if Bradford wants to be in Philadelphia, he'll be in Philadelphia. He said Bradford hasn't spoken, but they've said that in their communications with Bradford said he wants to be back. So it sounds like, at least on the surface,
it should be done, right?
Yeah, then it should be done. So I think I would imagine what's holding things up is the obviously what is with every NFL contract, the guaranteed money and how long the Eagles are actually going to commit to a guy who, granted, every NFL player could get hurt on the first snap of next season, but he's a guy that has an obvious injury history and not a great resume. So I'd imagine try as much as we debate Sam Bradford, that's what makes it so hard to figure out his contract because everyone thinks we hate Bradford and all that, but there is something. I mean, like it's not a clear-cut answer. And I would imagine how hard it is in that regard to negotiate this contract.
Well, the other side of it is, and again, I'm basing this off you saying that now you went from 20% to whatever how high you are now.
Yeah, like 55, 60.
Do you think? See, here's what I thought all along. I thought Bradford and his Tom Condon, who's a very Tom Condon. This isn't his first contract, so he's done a lot of these.
And a lot of quarterback contracts too.
Yeah, Tom Condon is one of the top agents. Maybe I don't want to do a ratings of agents, but he's top 1, 2, 3. Anyway.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
he knows. I think, and again, this is just my speculation. They thought there would be, hey, when we hit the market, boom, it's going to be that we're going to have offers to choose from, and it'll be great. And that was the plan, I think, in Bradford / Condon's mind was, all right, the Eagles have made us an offer. That's nice. Let's see what's out there. Well, maybe they found out that there isn't anything out there. That maybe, Cleveland's going to draft a guy, and maybe O'Brien's in love with Hackenberg. I mean, that's his guy, and they're not going to give you anything. And who else? San Fran doesn't want you. I don't even know what other teams are looking for quarterbacks right now, but, so maybe they're thinking, oh, Jesus, the Eagles might be our only option now.
And I think that's the interesting part about the Bradford thing is, we every week talk about how we don't think, he's the answer. And a lot of fans talk about that, and a lot of different other, beat reporters and media in Philadelphia talk about that. But then it's always followed up with, well, he's going to get a huge offer, right? So, well, if we don't, and I mean, if we don't think he's any good and we watched him, all along, and that's everything. Like, well, then why? Maybe like you're saying, maybe there isn't a huge offer coming.
I don't know who's going to make it to him. I did that story last week, and I didn't go into it with that kind of thinking. I went into it saying, who's the Eagles' competition for him? And I went through every team, and I was like, damn, there really might not be any like, if Cleveland didn't have the second pick in the draft, I would think the Browns could be serious contenders. Now, maybe the Browns also, maybe they looked at Wentz and Goff and Lynch and said, man, we don't like it. We don't really like any of these guys. Can't imagine that since Cleveland's a team that also thought Brandon Weeden could play, so they must love him.
Johnny Manziel.
If you're willing to draft Brandon Weeden and Johnny Manziel, Carson Wentz looks like Joe Montana to you probably. So,
and let's not forget they reportedly offered a first-round pick for Bradford last year.
But not the second, not number 2. But not number 2, not the second pick.
No, not number 2. But I'm saying they've shown interest.
That's what I'm saying. If Cleveland wasn't that, if they didn't have that second pick, that's a team I think could be very interested. But again, it's up to the Browns to say, would we rather have any quarterback we want out of this draft or Sam Bradford? It's up to them. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. I don't know where they're going to go with it or what team's going to come out and maybe make that offer to Sam. So let's go on the premise.
One more thing if I could just say this. What also makes things difficult is supposedly, reportedly, whatever, however you want to use, Colin Kaepernick's on the market. So And apparently Hugh Jackson, the new head coach of Cleveland, loves Colin Kaepernick. So that gets him Bradford. Wait, there's other, and RG3's on the market. So Bradford isn't like the only experienced quarterback that's available as well. So you got a group of rookies that he's competing with, and Kaepernick and RG3 who he's competing with.
Would you guys take? I mean, out of those three, how about out of these four options? Bradford, Kaepernick, RG3, and draft a guy. How would you rank those options?
And before we answer, is it kind of, what's the price tag
You
on
take
the
everything into consideration. So
Well,
Bradford's probably going to be the most expensive.
Okay, Bradford the most expensive, and then RG3 probably the cheapest because he probably gets cut.
Well, the rookie would be the cheapest.
Well, right, the rookie would be the cheapest.
Yeah.
And I mean,
you're not picking anything else. So.
But with the rookie, you also don't know who's going to be there.
Right, that's a
Well, if
crapshoot
you're Cleveland,
compared to who's in front of you.
Cleveland's the two. They're going to
get. Yeah, if you're Cleveland, but I'm saying from the Eagles' perspective.
Right. Oh, so, Eagles, or I'm just anybody.
You're the Eagles.
All right, Mark, you go first. How would you rank those, I guess, I was going to say options. Some of them are appealing, probably some of them aren't. How would you rank them?
See, my thing on RG3 isn't, I don't care what it's more medical than ability-wise. I know he has the ability. I mean, I'm confident that in his ability. That would be my doc. I would want my doctors would have to go over that knee, with every available medical thing. I'm not a medical guy, but I would go if my doctors tell me his knee's fine, he could be the RG3 he was when he first came out, then he's number one because I think he was a great player before.
Do you have any concerns about his personality off the field? No.
No more than I do with Kaepernick.
No, that's fair. I'm just wondering.
No, I'm not worried about that. And that's up to the leaders on my team, the Malcolm Jenkins and whoever else, to keep him in line if you think that's a problem. No, I think he's a wonderful talent. If you can get him for next to nothing and he's healthy, yeah, he's one. Kaepernick, I don't know. In a West Coast offense, I don't know. The rookies, I would just put RG3 1 and everybody else is like kind of tied for 2.
I'd probably go RG3 1. RG3 1 2. I just feel like he's got to have a second act in his career that's going to be good
if he's healthy.
If he's healthy, right?
I don't want him.
Kaepernick's interesting though. He's coming off of injuries too, and
not as serious as RG3's.
Not as serious though. I think it's a knee and a shoulder in the same offseason. But I would take a chance on him too. I mean, I feel like the Eagles or any team quarterback should make the phone call, and I think Eliot, you wrote about that last week that they should at least inquire about what it would take.
Right.
I'd probably put Bradford last. I would beyond the rookie.
The rookie, even, huh?
Yeah.
So all right. So with my ranking, I think.
Well, we know you got Bradford. You have like Chase Daniel ahead of Bradford, don't you?
No, honestly, I mean, I think you can make a compelling argument as to why Bradford would be a better option for this team. Look, if Chip Kelly was still here, I think Colin Kaepernick is the number one option, right?
Which is funny because he has them, and they're looking at them.
I know, but
like that, it just can't come together with Chip and the quarterback.
Also, to talk about that really quickly, I think that's more about Kaepernick's issues with management, not with Chip, because I think if Kaepernick goes, people will paint this as, Chip's getting rid of talent again, but. I mean, I think that situation was already pretty bad, but whatever. So that is what it is. But, I mean, I think I'd put RG3 first now. I mean, you guys kind of convinced me the price should be cheap.
I'm really concerned that my doctor comes back and says, whoa, I don't know.
All right, let's assume he's healthy, though.
Well, that's a big assumption.
No, it's a big assumption. I'm just saying. I mean, but I also have concerns about him off the field. I mean, like, you hear a lot of stories about how his teammates really, really didn't like him.
So when you mean off the field, you mean kind of locker room stuff more?
Yeah, sorry, not
a trouble guy.
Yeah,
right, because he seems like a pretty stand-up guy off the field. But I've heard those same things as you, Ellie. I mean, people said that his teammates, like he wasn't. He was part of the problem there too in Washington. Not all of it, Shanahan and the ownership, but he was part of it.
Right.
Oh yeah, he has his issues. There's no doubt. But they're not trouble.
No, you're right. He's not going to get suspended or anything like that. But I just mean in terms of a quarterback. And hey, I think RG3, like Joe said, is a classic change of scenery guy. Like, just get him somewhere else, and I think he'll be better. So,
right.
That is why I guess I'd put him number one. But I think my number two would be drafting a guy. I really like the idea at least if I'm the Eagles, of just, and again, you can debate whether Peterson's good at,
We don't know.
developing guys. But my point is,
Making it sound like he's Mike Homer.
no, I know, but I'm just saying, I mean, I like the idea of letting him pick a rookie this year and letting him develop him. So I think that would be my number two option. I like the idea of them kind of growing together, coming in at the same time. That would be my number two option. Now, I think the reason RG3 is number one is because you get some components of that with him. I mean, he's still a very young guy. He's only played less than 3 seasons actually on the field. So I would that would be my top option. Now, when it comes to Bradford and Kaepernick, I almost think the Eagles are better off picking Bradford over Kaepernick just because the style of offense they're going to run. And I also think if you bring Kaepernick in, if Chip Kelly was your head coach, I think it would work. But for some reason, I just wouldn't feel good about bringing Kaepernick in with Doug Peterson and running the West Coast offense and that type of thing. So I would actually,
I agree with that.
I like Kaepernick more as a player. I think he's a better quarterback. But I think if I was ranking in terms of if Howie Roseman came to me and said, give me out of these 4, just rank them for me, I think I'd put Kaepernick last just because I realistically don't think – I think the chance of him succeeding here would be hard. So
The other thing is you got to trade for – I mean –
yeah.
And the Eagles, what did the Eagles? They can't afford to give up anymore. I don't think they can afford to give up a lot of trade.
Well, they have 2/3 and 2/5.
Yeah, and they have a bunch of holes on the team.
Right, but the biggest one's quarterback. So if you actually think Kaepernick's the answer,
for I'd rather take RG3 for nothing.
But let me ask you this: let's say Howie Roseman and Doug Peterson think Colin Kaepernick's the guy, and then they also really like RG3.
You got to give him some.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So I think what the Eagles need to do is, and we touched on this a little earlier, what the Eagles need to do is just take money and everything out of it and just assess the quarterbacks and just rank them as players. And then whoever they have at the top of that board, just do whatever it takes to get them. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think you should say, well, I like Kaepernick the best, but he's going to take something to get, so let's get RG3. Like, I think
if you have them equal, if you have them
if you have them equal,
then why give up something? RG3 is going to get cut in another. They're not going to pay him that money. So
right, he's going to get cut. Yeah.
Or you can get him for next to nothing. I mean, if I have to give the Redskins a 7th, okay, I can.
Just so that you get the right to negotiate a new deal with him, because you're not going to pay him $16 million next year. Right.
Yeah, no one's going to do that.
Right. But I guess I just think the Eagles, talking about pricing and all that and what it takes to give up I love doing that. I think it's interesting. But in reality, they just need to decide who the best guy is and go with that. Because whoever they attach their wagon to this year, whether it be Bradford, whether it be a rookie, whether it be Kaepernick, whether it be RG3, that's it. This is probably the only time they're going to get to make this decision on a quarterback.
Let me ask you this, Eliot. Let's play this out further. I'll give you 2 options. One, the Eagles do re-sign Sam Bradford on a 3-year deal. 3-year, but I don't care how much money it is. 3-year deal. Do you still draft a quarterback at 13? If the
No.
Do you take it in the 3rd round, 4th round, something like that?
If you sign Bradford to be your guy, I think maybe in the 3rd round you take a guy, but I would not take it for a.
Okay.
I would not
take.
All
right. What if you sign RG3 to a 1-year deal?
Then I would.
He wants to prove it. He wants a 1-year. I'm going to prove that I'm the guy kind of deal. Then what do you do with the?
I don't think I like any of the quarterbacks enough, but I wouldn't hate it. I don't like the idea of having 2 guys on the team that both think they're the guy. Now, granted, I don't know if it worked at Washington or not. I mean, because I guess they ended up with Kirk Cousins. You can debate how good he is.
When the Redskins took Kirk Cousins in the 3rd round of that draft after taking RG3, everybody was like, "What are they doing? Why would they take another quarterback?" And it turned out that, thank God for them, they did take Cousins because RG3 got hurt and he got in the doghouse. And say what you want about Kirk Cousins, he's going to get a lot of money this year, and he's the Redskins quarterback going forward. They've decided that. They just got to come to a deal with him now. But
I guess having 2 quarterbacks is obviously not a bad problem to have. I mean, if they're both actually good, but the Eagles have so many other holes that if you bring Bradford back,
you can't spend 13 on
use 13 on an offensive lineman or something like that.
Everybody says that. There's not going to be a good offensive lineman there at 13. I'm telling you right now.
Yeah? You don't like Conklin out of Michigan State? Or
I did until I watched him play against Alabama. Those guys killed him. I think there's going to be, again, I don't know. I'll know more when I talk to people in the next week or 2. But I think I don't think I'll say this. I don't think the best if you go by the old best player available theory, I don't think the best player available at 13 will be an offensive lineman.
What if the best player available is a wide receiver?
It won't be, but I would take him if it was.
So you think?
This is not a good wide receiver draft.
Well, what position do you think? I mean, like when you, I mean, I
Linebacker.
know linebacker.
Are you in love with their linebackers?
No,
Well, I don't think
no.
anyone should be, but they seem like they would think they're I'm not going to say set, but like they don't have a. I don't think they go into this draft saying we need a linebacker early.
I would. Will the three of those guys play 16 games combined next year?
That's.
I
would guess yes, but I'm not gonna go much over it.
Exactly. I was going to say, what's the over/under on games played by Jordan Hicks, Kiko Alonso, and Michael Kendricks?
All right, how about this? Who's their best linebacker? Take into account
Connor Barwin, and he's not playing
it. Well, I'm saying, but of the guys that'll play linebacker for them next year, who do you think their best is?
I think the one I trust the most to just have a level of play probably would be Kendricks at this point.
That's what I was going to say.
He's not special. He's not probably as special as I thought he'd be, but at least I kind of have a feeling of what he is now. And Alonzo, I don't know, and Jordan Hicks. I mean, like if he's as good as he was for those 7 or 8 games, well, he's the answer. But he's always hurt.
And it was more like 3 or 4 games, right? I mean,
he played 6. He played 5 real good ones.
Right. And he was. I mean, he was amazing.
And the thing is, I wouldn't be as down on Hicks if everybody gets hurt. It happens. The reason he went in the bottom of the 3rd round was because he was always hurt at Texas. So this isn't like a first time he's ever been hurt kind of thing. He's the Sam Bradford of defense. I mean, in terms of health. I mean, I'm not sold that Jordan Hicks is going to be out there 16 games next year. Kiko, I mean, come on, you can't be sold on him. If there's a good linebacker there at 13, and I think there will be, I would not criticize that pick at all.
I wouldn't either, because you could really, I mean, you could start him. I mean, it's not like the 3 guys are cemented in there. I mean, like if Jordan Hicks isn't starting for you next year in week 1 because your rookie is killing it, I don't think that's
Well, I'm looking more outside.
Right, yeah. Sorry, outside. But I mean, yeah, exactly. Like if he beats Kiko out, Kiko only has 1 year, $700,000 remaining on his deal.
No,
so
Kiko, if they cut Kiko, I wouldn't be stunned. He might talk about art's not medical. He could be a medical reject now. He hurt that knee 2 years in a row.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, if he's healthy, I would be surprised if they cut him.
Well, if he's healthy, but he might not be. I mean,
yeah.
If he's the Kiko we saw, like everybody wants to talk about Hicks's 6 games or the last 7 games Bradford played. Well, talk about the last whatever many games Alonzo played.
I don't think anyone wants to, Mark. I mean, he didn't make a tackle the whole time.
Right. I don't think the Kiko Alonzo I saw last year is not a starting linebacker in the NFL.
Is he a good backup?
I don't know what he is. He's a hurt guy. He's damaged goods. I don't.
The crazy part about all this always is like how much the contract and money changes perception of everything. Like if Sam Bradford was under contract this year for $7 or $8 million, we wouldn't spend so much time talking about him. We would just be like, all right, he's the quarterback, and they'll probably draft somebody else. And if Kiko was making a lot of money this year coming up,
he'd be cut.
He'd be cut, right? But he's making nothing. So it's like I guess they're going to bring him back because he's cheap, and maybe he'll find him his old self.
Oh, listen, I just said how bad he was, but the Kiko Alonso that I saw with the Bills a couple years ago, and even the one I saw opening night in Atlanta, I like him a lot. If you tell me he's going to revert back to that form by some medical miracle, then no, I don't necessarily need a linebacker. But I mean, this is a violent game where injuries have ruined guys' careers, and unfortunately I think it may have done that to Kiko Alonso.
And that's the interesting thing. I mean, what you just said, Joe, about how much money and all plays into it is, look, if Bradford was under contract next year, I wouldn't cut him. Like, I don't think he's like, that big of a problem. But the debate isn't, is Bradford the best quarterback for next season?
That's the nicest thing you've ever said about Sam Bradford.
Yeah.
I don't think he's that big of a problem.
Yeah. But I'm saying, like, the biggest issue is how much do you actually want to commit to this guy? And that was the problem with when they traded for him was they didn't redo the deal. So they, I mean, in some ways that was good because you wanted to get him in here and see what he had. But then it sets up this scenario where, how much does the fact that the Eagles gave up a 2nd round pick for him factor into this? Like, do you almost have do you think about that when you re-sign him, or is that
you can't let that factor? First of all, the guy that did it isn't here anymore, so you can always just blame him.
Yeah, it's true. And Howie likes to do that. So
That could be a good way to say goodbye to Bradford. Like, we didn't do this anyway. This wasn't my doing anyway.
Exactly.
But yeah, I don't think it. I mean, in theory, what you're saying, Eliot, makes sense. Like, you gave up a second-round pick. How could you let the guy walk away after a year? But at the same time, you can't double down on a mistake just to justify it.
I mean, the Redskins gave up a lot more than a second-round pick for RG3, and they're moving on from there.
Yeah, that's after 3 seasons, though.
Well, but I'm just saying they gave up way more.
So. Four seasons, but 3 on the field. But yeah.
I want to get Eliot. I want to ask you. I'm sorry, I don't mean to take over here, Joe, but since you met with all the quarterbacks, right? Like you did interviews with them and stuff. I mean, again, forget the play because again, like the combine, like you said, they're in their underwear throwing passes with no defense. Who were you impressed with, and who weren't you impressed with?
I thought Jared Goff came across really well. I thought he was someone that seemed very mature. He handled the press well. He kind of looked the part of a franchise quarterback. And when it's funny, he actually reminded me of Matt Barkley a little bit.
Oh, that's a good thing?
Well, but I'm saying Matt Barkley, skill-wise, obviously wasn't ideal, but I think he always – Jared Goff to me seemed the most ready to come in and kind of be the guy. Now, talk about, in terms of the actual combine results, I mean – I don't know how much to be worried about the fact that his hands measured it at 9 inches. I mean, the history and stats show that is a problem. It's not, to me, it sounds silly, but I mean, I think that the history shows that is an issue. So that would be one problem.
I wasn't talking. I was just talking about, like you said, the face-to-face interviews that the teams did.
Right.
Well, you did the same thing. You didn't get to ask the things they asked. I mean,
right. I thought Goff came across well. I thought your boy Hogan came across very well.
My guy.
He did a good job.
Hogan's heroes.
Yeah, exactly. He did a good job, kind of like I would say like Goff and Hogan did the best job in terms of just actual like explaining X's and O's wise why they made the most sense and why they were ready for the NFL. A guy who didn't come across well that I thought would was Paxton Lynch. I had a chance. Yeah, I met with him at the Super Bowl earlier this month, and I got like 10 minutes by myself with him, and I thought he came across very confident and ready and all that. But when he was at the podium, and maybe, look, this is brutal honesty that it's good he's saying, but he kind of gave out the impression that he feels like he might be better off sitting a year. So maybe that actually says he's the smartest of all of them. I don't know.
Right.
But so I would say that would be my impressions of those three. Wentz also came across, I thought, when I met him at the Senior Bowl, I think he's shown some clear improvement in my mind in terms of just at the Senior Bowl, he seemed like the moment was a little too big for him. He seemed a little nervous with everything. But I thought he got up to the podium at the Combine and just kind of commanded the room. He did a lot better. So I think that's good to see because and again, we're talking about guys' personalities here, which is, kind of hard to. Yeah, no, it is important. No, I agree. It is important. But but I think he seems a lot more confident now than he did at the Senior Bowl, which is obviously a good sign.
Yeah, because the reason I asked about Wentz is like you say that Goff and Hogan came across well. Well, they, one went to Cal, one went to Stanford.
Sure.
They should come across well, and they're used to attention. They played in the Pac-12, a major conference. They've been interviewed a million times by a lot of writers. North Dakota State, probably not, right? I mean, Wentz probably had maybe one paper cover him, if that or something.
Right, there's probably the most
website,
Wentz has ever been written about, right?
You know what I'm saying? So that's interesting. And even Memphis, I mean, they're bigger than North Dakota State, obviously, but they're not in that Cal Stanford level. So, because I think this is an interesting draft quarterback. And you didn't even mention Connor Cook or Hackenberg or Dak Prescott or who am I forgetting? Somebody? Oh, your boy Cardell Jones.
Yeah, my boy. Yeah, I was disappointed with Cardell too because he gets hurt. He doesn't run the 40. I mean, he runs a 40. It comes off slow, and then he gets hurt and doesn't throw. So it was a bad week.
I'm telling you, I'm going to go on the record right now on our podcast here on the No Huddle and tell you that while I agree 100% that there's no Mariota Winston that's going to come in and start day one, and I don't think any of them should start day one. I think a couple of these guys, if we're having a conversation 3 years down the road, I think a couple of these guys are going to be pretty good quarterbacks. I'm not saying
Mark. I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to throw that out there. And Eliot, I wanted to ask you what people were saying about that second crop of quarterbacks. It almost feels to me like every year in the draft, obviously sometimes players emerge, like Mark you're alluding to. But every year in the draft, it's like, all right, you get bored with these quarterbacks in the draft once the first few go off the board in the first round. It's like, all right, well, you're not really going to find a guy now. But I heard Mike Mayock say a couple weeks ago there could be a couple Kirk Cousinses, and I think he
Yeah.
meant that as a high compliment. I think that's what you're going for, Mark.
A third-round guy that turns into be a good competent starter.
Right. So if I think if we're all assuming now or kind of feeling that Bradford is going to come back, that's what I'm starting to think about with the Eagles. Like, who will they take? And I do think they should still take a quarterback at some point. Can they find that guy? So inevitably, if this Bradford thing doesn't turn out to be, Bradford hoisting a Lombardi trophy, maybe they still find their next quarterback in this draft. I mean, what are people saying about those quarterbacks, Eliot? And what did you observe with that second crew?
I think compared to last year's draft, I think the fourth, fifth, sixth guy I think this year are considered to be more like just overall talented. I think last year the holes in the quarterbacks' games later in the draft, like Brett Hundley and those guys, were bigger than the holes in this year.
There were two quarterbacks in the last. That was it. There were two.
That's what I'm saying. But I think this year
they were the two best. But I mean, after that, you were reaching.
If you rank the quarterbacks in last year's draft and this year in one list, I think Mariota and Winston would be the top two, obviously. But I think like the next six might be from this year's draft, because I just think guys like Connor Cook and Kevin Hogan, they can't come in week one to play, but I think if you give them a year or two to develop, I think they have the skill set. I know there's some questions about Hogan's arm strength, but I think they have the skill set to be, like you said, a Kirk Cousins. Whereas Brett Hundley, I just don't know if he'll ever be a good enough passer. I mean, he certainly
wasn't the next one taken.
Who was the third one last year?
Petty, wasn't it?
Yeah, you're right. It was Petty. So
that was a big drop too, because Petty wasn't taken until what, the fourth round
by the Jets? Yeah, fourth or fifth round. So I do think the Eagles have a bet. Like if you sign Bradford and he's going to be your guy, then whatever. That's your mistake. But if you're gonna, I think a guy like Hogan. I mean, a guy like Hogan in the third round, or even, I don't know how far he'll fall, but the Eagles have 2 third-round picks and 2 fifth-round picks. So they certainly have, the way their draft board's set up is they can take a quarterback after the first round. I mean, they don't have a second-round pick. And I wouldn't take one in the second round, because then you're still really committing to him as your guy in the second round. But the third round on is when you that's more like developmental. And they have a ton of picks after that. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if a guy like Kevin Hogan.
If Hogan's there in the third round, that would be I'm like I said, I'm one of Hogan's heroes, but that would be a great pick. I think he's going to be good. I really do.
Well, he'll be there in the third round. I mean, I'd be surprised.
You don't know that. You don't know that.
All right. Well, all right. If you had to guess today, do you think he's going to be in the third?
No.
I think he's gone.
I think he might go like top of the third round. They're not picking until the middle of the third round, correct?
All right. So we're talking about a few spots here, but
that's all that matters.
Yeah. No. All right. But I'd say
Kelly could take him with the Niners' third round pick. How's that?
Hey, he could use Eagles' second round pick and do it. Or no, that's right.
He don't have it.
Yeah, that's right.
But the Rams do, and they need a quarterback.
Yeah, they do. I think that'd be a good Kaepernick landing spot. By the way,
that'd be funny, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
That would come full circle. It's like all three teams are just connected in some weird way.
So it'll be interesting. I mean, the Eagles certainly have a lot of options out there at quarterback. Whether any of them are really good ones.
You wrote the other day about them trading a pick. That you would trade down?
Yeah, I mean, if there's no quarterback at 13, I would.
Well, or if they re-sign Bradford, they're not taking a quarterback at 13.
Yeah, right.
But here's my thing, and I agree. If they can move, because I don't, like I said, I want an offensive lineman, but I don't want to reach for one at 13. But does somebody, why would somebody, who wants to come up to 13?
Well, unless someone loves whoever, whether
if let's say Paxton Lynch is there and another team that needs a quarterback. I mean, I don't know.
I don't know either. That's what I'm saying. I guess that would be the guy. If a quarterback, if one of the top 3 quarterbacks fell and Eagles didn't want him because they already signed Bradford, maybe Houston wants to come up and you could make that deal. Or how far down would you go? Does it matter?
If I get a second round pick, I would also, if I'm the Eagles, I'd be very interested in doing one like a deal where maybe I just don't pick in the first round this year, but I get a first round pick next year.
Like one of those old Patriots deals where they steal a team's first round pick for a year from later, and then all of a sudden they have 2 high picks.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
you would do that. You would trade 13 for a pick next year.
I mean, is there anybody that would be there at 13 where you're I'm super missing out on this guy?
Probably not.
Right. So, and I think the Eagles have. I really think.
So you're really tanking this. Then you're going to the. I don't hate to use that word tank, but then you really don't think they can win next year.
I don't think I think.
I mean, I think they'll get a starter. I think at 13 there will be somebody there that will start for the 2016 Eagles. I don't know what position, but there will be somebody that they could take at 13 that can come in and start for them, whether it's a linebacker.
Well,
offensive line, whatever.
There's really only one spot on the entire team that's completely cemented, and that's Fletcher Cox's spot. Well, I guess the defensive line, but
yeah. Well, the whole defensive line's kind of set, I think.
Yeah,
they could use another pass rusher, though, don't you think?
Yeah.
They're spending $1 billion on Curry, Barwin, and Graham. Do you want to spend more on it?
No, but I mean, I was, because the reason that made me think of this too was the talking about like building for the future and all that. The Eagles have $30 million in cap space, which is I think like top 15 in the league. But it wouldn't surprise me.
Possible.
What?
I don't know how.
Well, they carried over. Yeah, 7.
Right.
Yeah, everybody carried over 7, 9, 11, whatever. I mean, everybody's carrying.
I mean, I'd have to break it down.
Where does that put him? Right, that's right in the middle of the league, right? Because like some teams, like the Jaguars and the Giants, have like 70, 60.
See, but I think the Eagles are going to carry over a lot of money to next offseason. Like, I think this is going to be Howie's kind of like reboot offseason, and it just so happens they have to make a decision at quarterback, which kind of shapes everything. But I think in terms of like draft, it wouldn't surprise me if they traded down for extra picks. Like if you can get an extra pick, a first round pick next year. In terms of free agency,
I don't know how you're going to do that. I don't know how
Yeah, no, it'll be tough. But I just mean like these are the type of things I think the Eagles will be open to. Whereas I think other teams in the draft.
Oh, who wouldn't be? But I don't know. I don't know. Like we were saying, it's not going to be anybody great at third. Like to get a pick next year's number 1.
Yeah, I mean, it only takes one team, though. I mean,
to me, teams are always desperate. Like, if they see, like, every board is different. We know that.
Yeah,
so, like, some team might see a guy that they had at number 4, and somehow he's at 13. They're like, we got to go get that guy right now. The Eagles are shopping the pick. Maybe it could work.
Mm.
But I guess where I was going with it, too, is I don't think they're going to be big spenders in free agency. I think they're going to carry over.
Well, they've been big spenders already on their own guys.
Right. Yeah, you're right. I agree. But I'm saying once free agency starts, it would surprise me, man. We'll see, but it would just surprise me if they used all $30 million of that cap space. Well, I would bet they end up losing less than half of it.
Uses it all. Even they didn't even use it all last year. They used But you think they carry like 15 over?
Yeah, I mean that's what Howie traditionally did when he was running things. And the Eagles only carried over 7 last year with Chip and Manna.
Which is what most teams carry about 7.
No, I mean I would look it up, but I think the Eagles were probably in the lower part of carrying over money.
Really?
Would be my guess. Yeah, I mean
some didn't carry over any. Some
right
maxed.
And they could also sell it to the fan base too. Like if people are like, why did they spend this offseason? Well, they could be like, well, we did spend a lot of money on our own players. And if they spend on Bradford and they re-sign Cox, I mean, you're going to add all the numbers up. They spent a lot of money, just maybe not on free agents with big press conferences.
You also figure if they re-sign Bradford, there'll probably be a big boost in his jersey sales. So that'll be a nice little.
That's going to bring it back in a different way.
Well, at least they'll be selling them.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess, now this year there'll be no excuse to not put the Bradford jersey out on the rack. All right, guys, before we wrap this one up and we kind of look forward, and we'll do one next week. I guess if something big breaks, if a Bradford thing happens, we could always do an emergency podcast before next week. But we could preview free agency and everything like that and the whole offseason next time we get together. But I just want to touch quickly on what we heard last week, the DeMarco Murray rumors. I mean, do you guys think there's any chance that they find someone to trade for him? I know the Cowboys are always that team like, oh, maybe that reunion would work together. Just quick yes or no. Do you think the Eagles could find anyone that would trade for DeMarco Murray, Eliot?
I think if DeMarco Murray is willing to redo his deal, then maybe there's a possibility. I mean, I think it'd be tough because I think the only way he gets traded is if the Eagles get like a conditional 7th and he redoes his deal. But if you're just talking, I mean, like I had someone tweet me, and fans, I love their optimism that maybe the Eagles could trade like 13 and DeMarco Murray for number 4. Like you're not going to get anything of value for DeMarco Murray. What if DeMarco Murray is traded? It won't be the winner in the deal will be the Eagles for getting rid of him. So I think there's a very slim chance. I think there's a chance they outright cut him. I don't think.
I don't think there's a chance of that.
I don't know.
But yeah, I know. 13 million of that 30 that you have is gone.
That's fair. But so I would say I don't think I would say the chance of him actually being traded though are maybe 20%.
Well, I think this, and I know this doesn't happen in football. It's more of a basketball or baseball type trade, but maybe there's a guard on another team that has a terrible contract as well.
Right.
And you're just flipping bad contracts. But for the Eagles, you're getting a guard that's better than Matt Tobin. So, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
you're getting something for it.
But I also think a complicated part of this trade thing is, like, the Eagles are going to have to find a team where DeMarco wants to go there. And I don't know. I mean, you can just trade him, but I'm saying, like, if he has to redo his deal. And
no, right. If he's redoing a deal, it's to go back to the Cowboys. That's the only team he would redo his deal for, I think.
Yeah.
Don't you?
Eagles Cowboys trade. Now that would be something.
It's happened before.
Yeah. I mean, then watch, he'll run for 1,500 yards next year
behind the best offensive line.
Exactly.
That's the scary thing, too. Do you want to? If you're the Eagles, I
take my chances that he's not
good
anymore. Yeah.
Yeah,
I take my chances that they ruined him 2 years ago by just running him into the ground.
So it's like when they sent McNabb to Washington.
Right, exactly.
Like they didn't care because they knew he was done.
Yeah, I think he's done, but
he's going to get paid either way.
Too. That's the thing. Everybody thinks he wants. I've never heard anybody in Dallas say, "Oh yeah, we'd love to have Murray back."
Well, not for that money, I guess. But and he wasn't good for the Eagles, so they just like whatever, they moved on. But obviously, a lot's going to happen here over the next couple of weeks. We will be back next week, definitely, and maybe sooner if something big breaks on the Eagles. Everyone, thank you for listening. Elliot, as always, thanks for doing this.
No problem. Talk to you guys soon.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks to all of you for listening to episode 29 of the No Huddle Show. Make sure to follow the show on Twitter at the No Huddle Show. Subscribe on iTunes, on Stitcher, every single way you could find us. You could subscribe. We'll be back next week with you and a lot of Eagles news to talk about right here on NJ.com.